Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 12, Text 20, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. You got that?
Yeah.
Oh, you're getting it online, huh?
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna. Got it? Okay, so I'll read this. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 12, Vritrasura's glorious death. Text 20. Bhavanatashin mayang vai Vaishnaving janamohinim yadvihaya surang bhavam mahapurushatang gataha. Translation: You have surmounted the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu, and because of this liberation you have given up the demoniac mentality and have attained the position of an exalted devotee. Purport: Lord Vishnu is the Mahapurush. Therefore, one who becomes a Vaishnava attains the position of a Mahapaurusha. This position was attained by Maharaja Parikshit. It is said in the Padma Purana that the distinction between a demigod and a demon is that a demigod is a devotee of Lord Vishnu, whereas a demon is just the opposite. Vishnu bhakta smrito daiva asuras tadviparyayaha. Vritrasura was considered a demon, but actually he was more than qualified as a devotee or Mahapaurusha. If one somehow becomes a devotee of the Supreme Lord, whatever his position, he can be brought to the position of a perfect person. This is possible if an unalloyed devotee tries to serve the Lord by delivering him in this way. Therefore, Shukdev Goswami says in Srimad Bhagavatam, Kiratahunandra Pulinda Pulkasha Abhira Shumbhayavana Kasadayaha Yene Chapapa Yadapashraya Shraya Shuddhanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Namaha. Kirats, Huns, Andhras, Pulindas, Pulkashas, Abhiras, Shumbas, Yavanas, and members of the Kasa races, and even others addicted to sinful acts, can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord, for He is the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto Him. That's the end of that translation. Continuing the purport. Anyone can be purified if he takes shelter of a pure devotee and molds his character according to the pure devotee's direction. Then even if one is a Kirata, Andhra, Pulinda or whatever, he can be purified and elevated to the position of a Mahapaurusha. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Shreshtam Manmapi Shakti Putramatra Swarupam Rupam Tasya Grajamurupuring Maturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Ataf Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Why among the 18,000 verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam I chose to speak on this? I'll just give a few words. Well, that will become more apparent as I go on with this talk, which may continue over a few days. A topic that even someone of very demoniac mentality, or someone who's not expected to take to Krishna consciousness, can become a completely pure devotee. I'm specifically speaking on this because a few weeks ago I received a letter from my dear godbrother Manida Prabhu, which I'll read out now, and around the same time I got a letter from the wife of one of my disciples, which addressed the same problem from another angle. The problem is that it appears that although Krishna consciousness is a purifying process, it is often seen, or seems to be seen, that purification is not going on. I'll read the letter from Manida Prabhu. Maybe I'll make a few comments in between, and then I'll make some extensive comment. This is the beginning the letter from him. There is one question I encounter for years while walking through the Grihasta battlefields filled with mutilated mental and physical bodies and small refugees called children. Well, could get a Nobel Prize for Literature. If I've cleaned up the English a bit. His English is not so wonderful, but his expression is certainly very perceptive. The Grihasta battlefields filled with mutilated mental and physical bodies. That means so many children and adults. They're mentally scarred, and even physically they're scarred from physical violence, and the small refugees called children. Continuing, Srila Prabhupada clearly established that ISKCON should not take part in marriages prior to initiation. He himself took the risk and initiated his first confused followers before getting them married. But what should be done with those who join as couples already? I know examples of those who joined as couples and often due to fanatical, immature preaching, decided to split and divorce in order to be brahmachari and brahmacharini. You got that? This wouldn't happen nowadays, but in the early days of ISKCON, sometimes couples would join, a young man and a young wife, and then the devotees would preach there, no, you don't have to be married, it's all Maya, and the man becomes a brahmachari. We used to, it's the Indian understanding of the word brahmachari is not someone who's married and leaves his wife, but in the West that idea is there somehow or other. And then so they'd split for the sake of spiritual advancement, and then in most cases they'd marry again later, and maybe not to each other. Then, Manida Prabhu continues, then there are those who stayed together, but it became evident that their relationship was originally initiated by their karma entirely outside of the Vedic system. In other words, they were together and they stayed together after joining Krishna consciousness, but they really weren't suited for each other. So as they met once upon a time in a non-Vedic way, how then can their marriage be considered Vedic, even when later sanctified by some Vedic arrangement? The same may be questioned about the children coming out of these marriages whose arrival was initiated prior to their parents becoming devotees. So it's a common scenario. People become devotees, but they already have children, and the children all of a sudden start getting brought up as devotees, but they were conceived by non-Krishna conscious parents, and the samskaras, the mental impressions in their minds, in their earliest formative years, are very strong. So in many cases, such children, they don't become devotees. They're not, as they grow up, they're not so interested. So Manida Prabhu continues, I never found an answer for these questions. And it was proven to me that what was studied in a karmic way is not easy to spiritualize when the participants are set firmly in their karmic ways. I'll give a little interpretation that the force of previous mentality and impressions are such that it's very difficult to overcome. And he gives an example of a couple who joined together, tried to be a good Vedic couple. The way that the word Vedic is used in Western parlance is it's a bit, here in India we wouldn't talk about so much about being a good Vedic couple, we'd say more like dharmic. They tried to follow dharma. Tried to be a Vedic couple and finally divorced after years, she becoming the mistress of the local manager, I guess that means the manager of a temple, and he moving into the congregational field, finding another devotee lady who helped him to settle down in a more steady environment. Or a couple who wanted to divorce when joining as they found themselves incompatible. I convinced them to try it out anyway, and after having 3 children, they divorced finally with rather ghastly consequences. So, how can the karmic pattern be spiritualized? The same thing may be questioned regarding the children being produced on some LSD trip, being then integrated into the Gurukul and designated as Vaishnavas. So, very perceptive questioning, and very real problems. I mean, the way it's framed might seem a little humorous, but these are some of the realities that we're living with, that people want to be devotees, but due to their karmic backgrounds, a very strong force of material conditioning, they have a hard time doing so, and sometimes the result of men and women trying to live together according to an ideal, it doesn't work out, and it comes out so badly that they become very far away from the ideal. So underlying this question is another question. Does the process not work? Does Krishna consciousness not work? Are some people too badly affected karmically to be able to take to Krishna consciousness fully? That reminds us of the description in Chaitanya Charitamrita, how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Panchatattva, came to inundate the world with Krishna consciousness. And everyone became Krishna conscious. But some people, they resisted. There were the various categories, the fallen students, the Kashir Mayavadi, the impersonalists of Varanasi, the Kutarkic, those who are addicted to logical arguments, sinful people, they could be easily uplifted. But those who were committedly against Krishna consciousness, they resisted being Krishna conscious. Now, what's being questioned here is somewhat different. We're talking about people who come from a very sinful background, but who want to be Krishna conscious, but they're having a hard time. Some example in my life I saw many years ago, but I still remember that one woman came to see me. I was in Dubai. A woman came to see me with her son, who I guess was around 20 years old, and just Indian, and just by seeing him I could understand he's a homosexual, and he was suffering. He was suffering because he didn't want to be a homosexual. He understood there's something not to be proud about. Nowadays they have gay pride. He wanted to he wanted to fit in with the rest of society, but he was, and his mother and he himself, they asked, can you help? And he said, well, there's this purification process of Krishna consciousness. He was very strongly affected. What about committed Buddhist, for instance? Someone who is experiencing, I don't know what they experience, but whatever they experience, and they feel they're getting something from their Buddhism, or someone who's a staunch Muslim. Well, in that case, Prabhupada would encourage them, you worship God in the way that you're worshipping. But someone who's Buddhism is a long way from theism. And my personal experience, again going back to personal experience, of some time I spent in Thailand. Preaching there is very difficult because in general people feel materially content and they're Buddhists. And they strongly identify with being Buddhist. And they don't want to go away from that. So it's very difficult for them to take up Krishna consciousness, or to get people to come to Krishna consciousness seriously. So the question is that, well, can Krishna consciousness reach everyone? They may think, well, if it can reach, if a demon like Vritrasura can become a great devotee, if Jagai and Madhai can become great devotees, then cannot everyone? Of course, the Vritrasura was previously Chitraketu. He was circumstantially cursed to take the body of a demon, and he had somewhat of a demoniac mentality because he was fighting with Indra. And Krishna comes to this world, Indrari vyakalam lokam hridayanti yuge yuge. He comes to this world when the demons attack Indra and other godly people. So he did have that demoniac nature, that maybe that little tinge of something wrong in that he verbally attacked, maybe just in a joking way, but still it was taken very seriously by Parvati that he verbally attacked Lord Shiva. So he took that demoniac form, but basically he was a great devotee. So that could be said. And then Jagai and Madhai, they are Jai and Vijay of Vaikuntha. So what about the devotees? They're trying to be devotees, but they're really got very strong karmic backgrounds which impel them, as it were, to do wrong. As Arjuna asked the question, Ata kena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha anichanapi varshnaya baladiva niyojitaha. What is it, he asked Krishna, that impels people to do wrong even when they know it's wrong and they don't want to do it, but it's almost as if they're impelled? And Krishna's answer there is kama esha, krodha esha, rajoguna samudbhavaha, mahashano mahapatma vidhena mehavarinam. The great enemy is there, kama, material desire, which is born of the rajoguna, the desire to enjoy this world. In sattvaguna, one is becoming detached from the world. In tamaguna, one is just a very dull consciousness. And in rajoguna, there's very strong desire to enjoy this world. So that from that comes karma, from desire comes action, sa-akamayata. We find in the Upanishads that he desires, and therefore he created the world. Sa-asrijata. But that material desire is like a great blazing fire of great sin. What is it? Tasmat indriyat niyamya bharatarshava. So Krishna says, Tasmat tvam indriyate, what is it?
Tasmat tvam
Indriyaranam niyamya bharatarshava. Yeah, so after Krishna discusses this, and he says, therefore, from the very beginning, you regulate niyamya bharatarshava. Tatmanam prajahiyanam jnana vijnana nashanam. So you niyamya bharata, you overcome this destroyer of knowledge and realization. So one way of looking at it is that, well, they're trying to be devotees. Despite being so conditioned, still they're devotees at some level. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is that, yeah, Krishna consciousness works, but we really have to apply ourselves to it. Niyamya bharatarshava. We have to apply ourselves. We have to follow all the rules and regulations. If we don't do that, then we can't expect the result. It could be said something like a plane to take off has to go over, or a space rocket, and it requires a big thrust to get it off the ground. You can't expect a plane to take off if it's just dawdling along the runway at 5 kilometers an hour. It's not going to take off. It requires great thrust. Tivrena bhakti yogena, with great application, with great intensity, we have to take to Krishna consciousness. So anyone who chants Hare Krishna or takes to Krishna consciousness, that is for their great eternal benefit. But they might be stuck down here. It seems to be very difficult to overcome those that karmic conditioning. In this purport that we just read, Srila Prabhupada quoted this verse, Kirata, Hunandra, Pulinda Pulkasha, Abhira Shumba, Yavana Kasadayaha, Yene Chapapa Yadapashraya Ashraya, Shuddhanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Nama. There was mention there about so many fallen races, people who have very bad culture or lack of culture, even such people who are expected to be sinful by their very background, they can be purified by association of devotees of the Lord. So this also gives some idea, if you turn the proposition around, if you look at it from another angle, that people who are born into a culture which is not sinful or which is favorable for Krishna consciousness, they can be expected to take to Krishna consciousness more easily. It was very surprising to Indian people and to Western people, and maybe even to Srila Prabhupada himself, when he went to the Western countries and he brought people into Krishna consciousness. And when he brought them back to India, people, they were amazed. How can such people be sadhus? Sadhu means an Indian. There's no question of a Westerner being a sadhu. Sadhu means an Indian. Of course, some hippies were coming from the West, and some of them were growing long hair and smoking ganja, but they weren't considered to be sadhus. They were considered to be hippies. And many of the Indian people, they thought, well, they're not sadhus. These people that Bhaktivedanta Swami has brought, they can't be. It's just impossible. They won't keep it up for long. It's just a fad. But actually they did. But the point is, they did maintain Krishna consciousness, some of them, for many years. But there is a point there, they weren't expected to be. So the culture is very helpful, which is one reason, among many reasons, why Srila Prabhupada, or maybe you could say that's the central reason, why he wanted to establish Krishna conscious communities, Varna-ashram communities. Because if we're living in the sense gratification world, and we have all these bad things in our hearts, we may be trying to be Krishna conscious, but it becomes very difficult. If we live in a community where everyone's a devotee, everyone's committed to Krishna consciousness, then there's nothing else to do but to be Krishna conscious. And especially in the pilot Varnashram projects that I'm overseeing here in India, no electricity, which means there's no TV, no internet, no cell phones, so it's just an enclosed community. So if you're going to be there, you're going to have to get up early in the morning, go to Mangalarti. It's a big commitment, and not all devotees are even ready to do that. Many would like to hold on to their little bit Krishna consciousness, little bit sense gratification way of life. Those who are very serious, they are moving to the farm communities. Of course, it is possible to be very serious and in the city also, but it is definitely easier to commit when everyone around you is committing. Now, another consideration which I wish to discuss in some detail, this may go over a few days doing so, is the understanding of Varna-Sankara. Sankaro narakasya eva in Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna says the Varna-Sankaras, they make a hellish situation. Varna-Sankara means people or children who are born of good, religious, Vedic families, but who are born in lust. The parents, they don't properly follow the Vedic regulations which are required for producing children, and the children are born in lust. Arjuna was very afraid that with the mass destruction of the Kshatriya males, that the Kshatriya females would be unprotected and they would be subject to being raped, exploited, or used by low-class people, and the children born of such liaisons would be of hellish consciousness. There's a phenomenon called war children. In a war, when the troops overrun an area, then they rape the women, and then the women, so many women give birth to children born of rape. Horrible situation. There may be so many in the world today. So there is a difference between Kirata, Hunandra, those who are from a low-class background, who are not even expected to be Krishna conscious, and those from a good culture. A good culture, practically the only good culture from the Vedic point of view is that which is here in India. But then if that culture isn't followed properly, then that will break down also. And how many people nowadays are following the rules of here in India? How many are following the rules that are required for producing good children? Most people, they don't even know. They have no idea of what are the rules for producing good children. Still, we see there are some traditional families, especially a few Brahmin families here and there, who are very sober and calm. But if you go to a marriage in North India, it's wild. Mostly the marriages, the kind of music they play and the dancing that goes on, and it's just what kind of children can you expect out of that? It's the whole atmosphere is completely wild and very low level of consciousness. The kind of dancing, the kind of music, it's just pumped up lust. So that's not very cultured, to say the least. But even in the good families, do they follow all this Garbhadhan sanskar? Very unlikely. But still, in such families, especially those who are families of priests in temples, we can expect some better children. And the culture is there that of course, we can't say that all the priests are following everything, but some are also. So there is a better culture here in India, overall, definitely. And Srila Prabhupada wanted to reproduce that in the West by making communities of Vaishnava culture. Srila Prabhupada often mentions about Varna-Sankara, or children who are born out of lust rather than controlled sex life. Dhamma-viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. Controlled sex life, that is a representation of Krishna. So I'm going to read from Srila Prabhupada's purport to Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 14, Text 38. The conditions for having good progeny in society are that the husband should be disciplined in religious and regulative principles, and the wife should be faithful to the husband. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that sexual intercourse according to religious principles is a representation of Krishna consciousness. Before engaging in sexual intercourse, both the husband and the wife must consider their mental condition, the particular time, the husband's direction, the order of the husband, and obedience to the demigods. According to Vedic society, there is a suitable, auspicious time for sex life, which is called the time for Garbhadhan. Diti neglected all the principles of scriptural injunction, and therefore, although she was very anxious for auspicious children, she was informed that her children would not be worthy to be the sons of a Brahmana. There is a clear indication herein that a Brahmana's son is not always a Brahmana. Personalities like Ravana and Hiranyakashipu were actually born of Brahmanas, but they were not accepted as Brahmanas because their fathers did not follow the regulative principles for their birth. Such children are called demons or Rakshasas. There were only 1 or 2 Rakshasas in the previous ages due to negligence of the disciplinary methods, but during the age of Kali, there is no discipline in sex life. People can't even imagine. Discipline in sex life. The two things are completely opposite. How then can one expect good children? Certainly unwanted children cannot be a source of happiness in society, but through the Krishna consciousness movement, they can be raised to the human standard by chanting the holy name of God. That is the unique contribution of Lord Chaitanya to human society. So one point in considering the difficulties that our devotees experience in trying to be Krishna conscious. One thing is the culture they're born in. Another thing is not taking very strongly to Krishna consciousness. So many times Srila Prabhupada said, you follow these regulated principles. But then the culture may be such that it becomes difficult to follow the regulated principles. Now, one important point to consider is the Varna-Sankara, that we're all born of lust. We're not born out of a desire for good progeny who will grow up to be devotees. When most children are not born like that. So we ourselves are products of lust. So how much we're affected by the consciousness that we bring in to the world. What happens is karmana daiva netrena jantur deho papatteye. Under the direction of the Supreme Lord as Paramatma and the demigods, certain living beings are directed to take birth in the womb of a mother. They are injected into the semen of a man and then placed in the womb of a woman. So if the demigods see that here's someone very saintly, he should be born in a saintly family, then they get that jiva who's saintly, still conditioned, but saintly, gets born in a saintly womb. But even in the case of Kashyapa and Diti, they're both from a saintly background, but due to not following the rules and regulations for proper procreation, Diti was overcome by lust, and Kashyapa submitted to that, and so they became the parents of great demons who were placed in the semen of Kashyapa and injected into the womb of Diti. Of course, there was a purpose in this, Krishna's purpose behind all this. But that's the general understanding that the consciousness at the time of sexual union that determines to a large extent what kind of children will be there. And of course we can't expect that someone will be of sinful consciousness and all of a sudden at the time of sex life they'll be of saintly consciousness. It's just like you can't expect someone to be sinful and at the time of death remember Krishna. There has to be ongoing sadhana. So if parents or devotees, they can't expect to live an unregulated life, not very Krishna conscious, and then all of a sudden at the time of sex life their consciousness will be clear and pure, and they'll have a good child. The demigods will send a jiva suitable for being injected into that womb. So talking about this unwanted children or children who are just a headache to society, I'm going to read now from a 1960 Back to Godhead magazine, an article by Srila Prabhupada talking about youth in various countries of the world who are simply troublesome. They cause young male adolescents causing problems in society by their violent behavior. So Srila Prabhupada writes, the teddy boys in England, the rebels without cause in America, the half-strong in Germany, the leather jackets in Sweden, the children of the sun in Japan, and the style boys in USSR are some of the byproducts of a godless civilization. And that is the root cause of all headache. That requires a thorough treatment. According to the Bhagavad Gita, these unwanted children of all countries are known as the Varna-Sankara. In the present day, in order to check the overgrowing population of the world, they are all anxious to make propaganda of family planning. Or in other words, the married couples do not want children, but they want to enjoy life. They want to have sex, but they don't want children. Contraceptive methods. So Prabhupada says, this enjoyment against the laws of nature is the cause of Varna-Sankara. The massive propagation throughout the world, sex, 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 sex. Sex is there in society, otherwise it wouldn't be society. Sex is required for children, but the massive propaganda, everything advertised with sex, the whole consciousness of sex is so much pumped up, and therefore we can expect that children born out of this overly sexed consciousness, they will be of poor consciousness. So this enjoyment against the laws of nature is the cause of Varna-Sankara, and when there is overpopulation of the Varna-Sankara type of citizen, the whole world becomes unfit for habitation by the saner section of humankind. Practically the whole world is turned into a dungeon hell. Chastity is the only means to check an overgrowing population of the Varna-Sankara class. And if you have no respect for chastity, you must suffer the consequence of the Varna-Sankara population. So chastity means for men to observe brahmacharya, to be controlled in their sexual life. Brahmacharya also for married men, that they don't use their wife as a machine for sex, as Srila Prabhupada rather graphically referred to it. And that the wife, chastity means she doesn't, the girls do not indulge in sex life before marriage, and only with one man throughout their life. That's becoming rarer and rarer, even here in India, sorry to say. So I'll read a few quotations from Srila Prabhupada about Varna-Sankara. From Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 7, Text 12, purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, an increase of Varna-Sankara population creates a hellish society. This is the society in which Americans now find themselves. And we can say Americans and practically the whole world, but America's leading the world in sense enjoyment. So they suffer more in this way. So why is there such a hellish situation all over the world? Well, here's a practical answer. Because of the increase of Varna-Sankara population. Children who are born, they're unwanted. The father doesn't want them. In many cases, the children won't even know who the father is, because he just left the mother. He never had any serious commitment to her. He was never married to her. Or after marriage, after some short time, he left. Or the woman, she was never in a serious relationship with any man. But Yeah, Sankaro Narakayaiva, Bhagavad Gita. Unwanted children make for hellish life. So, unwanted children. Then quoting from Srila Prabhupada, from one lecture he gave in Bombay. I'll read the quote. Garbhadhan sanskar means when you're going to make your wife pregnant, there is a sanskar, a ceremony. And especially in the Brahmana families, if there is no Garbhadhan sanskar, he immediately becomes a Shudra. This is the Shastric injunction. That's there in Shastra. In a Brahmin family, if they don't follow the Garbhadhan sanskar before engaging in sex life, then the whole family is degraded to the level of Shudra. Srila Prabhupada says, you must follow the sanskara. Sanskarad bhavedvija janmana jayate Shudra. One who follows the sanskaras. Sanskara, Srila Prabhupada translates as a purifying ceremony. Then he becomes purified. This is called dharma viruddha, not against the religious principles. If we do not follow the religious principles, then we are animals, that's all. Ahara nidra bhaya maithunam cha samanam etat pashubhya naranam dharmena hina pashubhya naranam dharmena hina dharmena hina pyashabhya naranam. Animals and humans eat, sleep, mate and defend. The difference is that in human life there is the possibility of observing dharma. Therefore, if a human does not observe dharma, he is just an animal. So Srila Prabhupada said, if we do not follow the principles, then we are animals, that's all. That is the difference between the animal and man. If you do not follow the regulative principles enjoined in the Shastras, then Srila Prabhupada quoted, Yah Shastra Vidhi Mutsrija Vartate Kamakarata Nasukam Avapnoti. Often when Srila Prabhupada was speaking in India, he would quote Shastra and not give a English translation, presuming that the people he was talking with would understand. And often you find in India when Srila Prabhupada is talking with others, they would also quote Shastra and not explain. They're talking in English, but they wouldn't explain what is the meaning of the Shastric statement, because it's just presumed that the listener understands. So the meaning of the Yashastra Utrija Vartate Kamakarataha Nasasiddhim Avapnoti Nasukam Naparam Gatim. From Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that those who flout the Shastric rules and act simply according to their whims, they cannot attain perfection, nor happiness, nor the supreme destination. So Srila Prabhupada continues, because we do not follow the Shastric injunction, therefore we are thinking that the population is increasing, let us use the contraceptive method. The so-called contraceptive method is there because we are having sex life against religion. Against religion. But if you have sex life in pursuance of the religious principle, you don't require this contraception. Because to become a father and mother is not restricted, but to become the father and mother of cats and dogs is restricted. To become a father or mother is not restricted, that is nature. You become the father of hundreds of children, Srila Prabhupada says, but don't produce cats and dogs. Now people say, well, what do you mean, cats and dogs? Humans don't give birth to cats and dogs. Well, they do. We can see all around. They give birth to children whose level of consciousness is on the level of cats and dogs. Then dharma viruddha. And there will be unwanted population, problems, fighting, no peace, no tranquility, everything, all. It will be hell. So, because people are producing children against the religious principle, therefore the whole world is full of Varna-Sankara, and there is no peace. So if you follow the principles of Bhagavad Gita, automatically there will be peace. because every child, every boy, every girl will be sober, Krishna conscious. And therefore Shastra prohibits. Pitana sasyat, one should not become a father. Jananina sasyat, one should not become a mother. Guruna sasyat, one should not become a guru. Shouldn't become a guru, shouldn't become a mother, shouldn't become a father. Why? Namochedya samupeta mrityam. If you cannot stop the course of birth and death of your children, then don't become a father. This is called religious contraceptive. Remain without children. This is called dharmic life. So, what do we get from this? Well, we're all ourselves of Varna-Sankara. We're not born in a properly religious background. And that will exacerbate with each generation. Each generation will get, if children born in lust, and they're more lusty, and then they give birth to more lusty children, and those children give birth to more lusty, and in this way the whole society degrades. Now, getting back to that purport that I read from the Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 14, Text 38, and I gave some more quotes from Srila Prabhupada to give more explanation that Srila Prabhupada gave on this. What are the main points, or some of the salient points to understand from all this discussion? Parents should accept as a duty. First of all, I have to understand we have a duty that they want to have the children. They have to give the children the best possible start in life. And what does that mean? Send them to a good school, give them lots of expensive toys. No, it begins even before conception. First of all, the parents have to be of good consciousness. We may say, well, wait a minute, we got the original problem is that we have such bad consciousness ourselves. So therefore we're trying to be good devotees, but anichanapi varshaya baladi iva neyojitaha. We're forced, it seems, to do wrong. Okay, but we're just examining the whole background of this, because at some point if we're going to make Krishna consciousness work in human society, it's a Sankirtan movement, it's a group movement. By ourselves it's very difficult. Ekaki ama nahi paibol harinama sankirtane. By ourselves it's very difficult to practice Krishna consciousness. So if we're going to cut this vicious cycle of children being born of degraded parents and then they give birth to more degraded parents, we're going to have to see what's the science behind it, the Vedic science, that at the very beginning the children have to be given a good chance by conceiving them in Krishna consciousness. Now, what do we get from here? Srila Prabhupada has analyzed this society and seen that this Varna-Sankara, it's a major problem. Just as Arjuna saw, it's going to be a major problem. But, as we understand again and again from Shastra, and this is a major part of the very reason for the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and of the whole Krishna consciousness movement as it's going on at the present time. Krishna consciousness cannot be checked. It doesn't matter how fallen we are, if we take seriously to Krishna consciousness, ideal conditions or not. If we take seriously to the chanting of the holy name, we can achieve all perfection. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhu Kohilam, Ei Maha Mantra, Iha Japagiya Shabe Kare, Nibandha, Iha Hoite, Sarva Siddhi, Hoibe Shaba, Sarva Kohanam, Vidhi Nahiya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, heard what I said? I said the Maha Mantra. Everyone should chant this, following the rules and regulations of spiritual life. By this process, everyone can achieve all perfection. There's no need to do it. There's no use to do anything else. So that's the solution. Otherwise, what do we have? As Srila Prabhupada noted, there are gangs of youths, and nowadays it's not, or for quite some time, it's not only been boys or young men, it's been girl gangs also, because there's this propaganda that girls have to be as good as boys, so if they see, some girls see, well, the men, young boys are going around and holding people up at knife point and stealing their money and killing others, so girls can do it too. That's, you want to go to the Western world, advanced civilization, it's still unimaginable in India, girl gangs. There was, of course, that Fulan Devi from Chambal area, who was a female leader of a gang of dacoits. But the idea of, and she was eventually elected to the parliament. But in general, there's still the idea of having gangs of young girls roaming the streets and knifing people is still in India. There's no such thing imagined. Although there are literally millions of abortions every year, so the girls are killing their children in the womb due to illicit sex, in most cases probably. So this gang phenomena, it's increasing, but that's only one. The violence all over the world is increasing. Brita hingsa, that's one of the symptoms of Kali-yuga. Meaningless, needless violence. Sometimes violence is required in human society. And that's also required to suppress and control criminals. It may be required to forcibly control them. But useless, meaningless violence, people taking pleasure in violence, it's increasing, as well as the degree of inhumanity that's going on. And sometimes in a seemingly very sophisticated way. Nowadays, a computer operator sitting in America can send a drone out to kill people in Pakistan or Afghanistan. So for him it looks like a computer game. But he's actually killing real people. Very sophisticated, very brutal. This is how technology is being used for killing people. Horrible. They have no training of what are they going to do by such killing. They're going to get a sinful result. The higher goal of life. We're supposed to become purified from any form of sense gratification. What to speak of this gross brutality, and then the demoniac mentality to control others by force. This in a gang. What do we have these gangs in the Western world? The young people who feel they can't get ahead in life. They're on the lower level of human society, so they're just by force they capture someone and force them to. They torture them, and are cruel to them, beat them up, kill them. Horrible. In London, it's recognized as it's a very violent city with knife crime is just very common. Young people get knives and stab others, kill them, maim them, at the very least injure them. It becomes very dangerous. What a situation. Even young girls, they carry knives to protect themselves from someone else forcibly raping them or whatever. This civilization, what's the cause? Well, the cause is forgetfulness of Krishna, but especially when this sex desire is increased more and more and more, and then children are born out of lust. This, friends, is Kali-yuga. Here's another quote from Srila Prabhupada, speaking in London in July 1973. Srila Prabhupada said, the exact example of Varna-Sankara is the hippies at the present moment. All over the world, not only in the Western countries, but in India also, Srila Prabhupada said. So the population, hippie population, means Sankara population. Increase of such population means narakayaiva, naraka, hellish condition of life in this life. You may think, well, people are born in a hellish mentality, they go to hell. But Srila Prabhupada says, even in this life, it's as if they're living in hell. Many times I've said, I'll say it again, once on going door to door in an apartment block, or on book distribution in the evening, sometime in the 1970s in Birmingham, a city in central England, the Midlands. I had experience knocking on the door opens, and then the sound comes out of the TV blaring, the children yelling, the father yelling at the children, the dog barking, the smell of meat and onions, and the woman opens the door with a completely harassed look on her face. And I realize, this is how people are living. Hellish. Going to hell, already in hell. Srila Prabhupada says, practically we have seen in recent years in Calcutta it's become a hellish life. Because at that time in Calcutta also there was the young people were Naxalites. The educated young men who weren't getting jobs, they became Naxalites, and they would kill people in the streets. Became very dangerous, especially for the Marwari industrialists. They would just kill them. It's a very dangerous situation in Calcutta. Srila Prabhupada said the younger generation is so polluted and contaminated that you cannot safely walk in the street. Anywhere the young boys encircle you and rob you, you cannot say no. The police cannot help, the government cannot help, and that's a fact. There's so many times, you call the police, there's a robbery going on or something, and they just don't come. They don't have enough staff. Years ago, one devotee told me that there was a murder in Los Angeles. Actually, it was one of our devotees. And one of our devotees, she phoned up the police and said, well, actually, you know that murder, that person, I knew him well, I can give that person who was murdered, I can give you some information that might be useful in your investigation. And the reply said, madam, you please phone this number. There's no use just telling us there are so many murders, you have to get the number of the murder, and then you call us back. So many it was just like calling up any other government department. It's just bureaucracy. They're not that much serious to. There's so many murders and we just can't. It's just too many. We can't keep up with it. So Srila Prabhupada said, these unwanted children, without being trained in the Varnashram system, they become the cause of hellish life in this life and also after death. Shall I finish there because of the light, or shall I go on for some more time? Okay, I'll finish there. And that sad note. But there's hope. There is hope.
5 more minutes or so.
There is hope. There is hope. I'll plan on speaking on this more tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyascha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah.